Hi everyone. I interned at Twilio this summer, June and July of 2021, and I realized that I haven't made any video or any blog article on my internship experience and my interview experience with Twilio, how I got hired. So in these couple of videos, I'll talk about my internship experience as well as the hiring process. So in this first video, let's focus on the interview process, how I got hired for the internship. There were three rounds in the interview process. Number one was the coding round. In the coding round, the questions were pretty simple. I remember distinctly that one of them was based on strings. Although I don't remember the topic for the other one, I think it was either based on arrays or strings again. So the questions were pretty easy. A lot of people could get all of the test cases, including the bonus test cases, working. We were, however, asked to write clean code, which meant that we had to use good variable names, add comments wherever applicable. And there are two reasons why I might have been shortlisted for the next round, as were the seven other people from my college. So, number one was that I wrote clean code, which was given in the question itself. And number two was I submitted a little early. So, we had 60 minutes for these two questions. I believe I submitted somewhere around the 40-minute mark. So it was either of these two reasons or a combination of both that led to me being shortlisted. One thing I remember from the coding round is that although I normally do my competitive coding questions in C++, for one of the questions, I decided to use Java because some method popped into my head at the moment, and that made my task really simple. So I did one question in C++, the other one in Java. Although I don't think this contributed to me being shortlisted, but that's something I distinctly remember from the Twilio coding round. And next up, I had the coding interview. So there were two interviews. One was a coding interview, the other one was a hiring manager interview. All eight people from my college who were shortlisted had to give both of these interviews. And I believe for half of us, the coding round was first and the hiring manager round was second. And for the others, it was the other way around. Didn't really matter too much. They were independent of each other. So in the coding round, when the interview started, there was a real-time code editor. So whatever I was coding, the interviewer could see it in real time. And he had already written down the question there. So here is what the question looked like. All right, so I was given a list like this, which is these are names of airports, and there are flights connecting the airports like the arrows show. So there's a flight from LAX to LHR, and there's a flight from SFO to LAX, and then there's a flight from LHR to JFK. So this was the basic question that was given to me, and I was asked to print the order. So there's a source airport in this case and a destination airport. In this case, in the example that I showed, SFO is the source airport because there is no incoming flight into SFO, and JFK was the destination because there's no outgoing flight from JFK. I was told that uh, an airport would only have a maximum of one incoming flight and one outgoing flight. So apart from the source and destination, all of the others would have exactly one flight into the airport and one flight out of there. This was the question. For those of you who have some practice with comparative coding, you might know that this is a very straightforward graph implementation question. So the flights would represent the edges and the airports would represent the vertices. So in my case, I didn't really know how to implement a graph, so I did the question using maps. I stored a map of a string and a string, and uh, for every source, I could find the destination using the map. So this was the question, and I initially wrote the pseudocode in C++, but turned out that the interviewer wanted me to run the code, which was kind of surprising for me. So when I tried to run the code, I'd messed up some of the imports, and I didn't really know what to do. I was stuck. I asked the interviewer for help, And he told me that there was nothing that he could do. I had to find a solution myself, and I had to find it quick. So I decided to switch languages at that point. I switched to Java, changed the code accordingly, and it so happened that there was one method. I think it was in C++. I didn't remember the exact name of the map method that I wanted to use. So once again, I asked the interviewer for the method, and to my surprise, he said, just look it up. And I really like that approach in the sense that when I'm doing some actual code, when I'm working on a project, I will have access to the internet. And if I don't know the exact name of a method, I can just look it up. So, assuming I know what to look up, it's a pretty quick thing to do. So that's what I did in the middle of the interview. I Googled a method, but nonetheless, the C++ code didn't work because of the imports. I was messing them up. I switched to Java, got the code running, and then the rest of the questions in the coding interview were based on this first question itself. So the next part was that there could now be multiple branches. So from one airport, there could be multiple flights, and I had to print, I believe, one route or all of the routes. I don't really remember the exact thing, but there was some amount of branching in this case. And I got this working as well. All I had to do was change from a map of a string and a string to a map of a string and a list of strings. So for every source, there could be a list of strings which represent the destination airports. And I was able to get this working as well with slight modifications to my earlier code. And although there was a third part, but we didn't have time for this. The third part was that there could be cycles in the graph. So it could so happen that there's a flight from SFO to LAX, LAX to LHR, LHR to JFK, and from JFK back to SFO. That was also possible. So I didn't have time for this one mainly because I switched languages in the middle of the interview. But nonetheless, I think it was good that I was able to get those two questions correct. And I later found out that for all of the candidates, the question was the same, and people actually did this question much faster and better than I did because they knew how to implement a graph. But next, I had the hiring manager interview, and that was the one that where I really felt it went pretty well. So that started with an introduction of myself, and of course, I had already prepared an introduction which I was going to say. So on my resume, I haven't mentioned that I make YouTube videos. So I made sure to include that in my introduction. And the hiring manager was pretty impressed that I made videos on programming languages. And he asked me about what languages I knew, what languages I had made videos on, things on those lines. And he was really happy that I was already sharing knowledge with my batchmates, my juniors, basically my team at college. And in the hiring manager round, what they're looking for is whether the candidate embodies the Twilio values, the values that they appreciate at Twilio. We call it the Twilio magic. And if you have the Twilio magic, then you're a good fit into the company, into the team. So that's what they're looking for. If you're going for a hiring manager interview at Twilio, be sure to read up on Twilio Magic and demonstrate how you embody those qualities. But later in the hiring manager interview, I had questions on HR stuff. Basically, if I've ever had a conflict with a teammate, how did I resolve that? Whether I've had to work really hard for a deadline and what did I do in that case, or whether I missed a deadline and what did I do then, things like that. And finally, I also had one technical question, which was a pretty standard one, implementing a queue with two stacks. So I'm hoping you know how to do this, but I was able to tell him how it's done. So this is the interview that went really well for me. And the same day that these interviews happened, they happened in the afternoon. And the same night, I was told that I'd been hired for the summer internship. So pretty cool moment for me. And let's talk about how my internship went, what I did at Twilio, and how I landed a full-time offer there in the next video. In the meanwhile, if you're appearing for a Twilio coding round or any of the interviews, all the very best. I'm sure you're going to ace it. Just have faith in yourself and do well. See you next time.